17 minutes past 2. Now, for the next half an hour or so, you may just want to listen, and I really wouldn't have a go at you for that, because I have a very interesting gentleman with us. His name is Shoaib Sultan Khan, and he is the chairman of an NGO called the Rural Support Programs Network. And Mr. Khan, welcome to the BBC Asia Network.
Thank you very much for having me.
Could you explain to our listeners what the Rural Support Programs Network does? What does it hope to achieve?
Well, it all began in December 1982 when I was invited by a Geneva-based NGO, the Aga Khan Rural Support, the Aga Khan Foundation, and they asked me that if I would be willing to initiate a program in the northern areas of Pakistan. And this is the most difficult mountainous area. You might have heard of K2 and Nanga Parbat.
Yes,
these are all these mountains.
Yes.
Himalayas, Karakoram, Hindu Kush, Kunlung, all these join there.
Pakistan,
though. Yes, it is. So this is where they wanted this program, and there were about 1 million inhabitants in that area. And they wanted an economic program which should double the income of the people in 10 years.
Okay. Right.
I was, of course, as I was telling you, in the jungles of Mahavali at System H in Galneva.
Wow, okay.
When they approached me.
You were in Sri Lanka at that point?
Yes.
Yeah.
This was as a UNICEF social development consultant.
How do you set about looking at 1 million people and thinking, how am I going to double your income in 10 years? I mean, this is making my head explode, the very idea. I mean, it's on such a huge scale, with so many problems, so many barriers, whether it be education, infrastructure, health. How do you do this?
Well, I had the pleasure and privilege of meeting a real visionary in my earlier incarnation as a civil servant in Pakistan, and what Bangladesh used to be East Pakistan.
Yes.
There was this gentleman called Dr. Hamid Khan, and he was implementing a program there. And he said that, look, if you want to improve the lot on the rural poor, then there is a distillation of the experience of the world over almost 15, 20 decades. And it's that development theory, the development principles which really, if implemented in letter and spirit, then they make a difference. And you'll be surprised that these principles were from 19th century Europe by a man called Raiffeisen.
What are these principles?
Three simple principles: that individually rural poor are helpless, but if they get organized, then it's a question of empowering them.
Right, okay.
And secondly, that capital is power. Unless they try to and agree to generate capital through a process of savings, however poor they may be, they would never be able to get the kind of capital that they need.
So rather than subsistence living, yes, which is living hand to mouth effectively, you have to learn to compartmentalize your money and save for a rainy day and use that money to invest in new ideas and new equipment, and you have to think like an entrepreneur, do you?
Because the whole assumption and the basis of this is that there is tremendous potential in people, even the poorest of the poor.
Well, that's the saddest thing about it, isn't it?
You know, I mean, I don't know, Michelangelo, when people used to praise his David, he would say, I have done nothing. David was there in the marble. I simply removed the superfluous material. This is exactly what applies here to the poor. There is tremendous potential in them. All that is needed is how to remove the obstacles which are preventing from unleashing that potential. And that unleashing happens. It cannot happen on an individual basis.
But where do you start? on that process? Because of course there's a lack of education, there's a lack of perhaps political willpower.
You don't go with a preconceived notion. You go to the poor. I mean, for example, when I go to a village, and now in 3 weeks' time, it will be 60th year of my working life. For the last 30 years, I've been doing nothing but going to villages in Pakistan and South Asia and mostly India. I must have gone to 7,000-8,000 villages by now.
To help.
Interacted with about nearly 500,000 or so men and women. And when I go to them and they expect that I have brought something, and of course the first program that I was doing with Zionist Aga Khan, one of the richest person in the world, they thought, well, I must be loaded with money and I'll come and say, all right, tell me what your problems are and what you need, and here it is, and I'll do it. And I'll go and say to them that, look, I'm not prepared to, neither am capable of doing anything if you tell me what your problems are and why these should not be done, and what, I mean, I said that the government is there and the others are there, you can go and tell them that. I have simply come with a methodology of development, which I can tell you those countries which were poor, and I quoted them, Germany, Japan and all those countries, they were as poor as you are today.
In the post-war period,
yes. Not in the post-war, I mean, go 100 years back.
Oh, I see, right.
You read Dickens and you see what was England.
Absolutely.
So, how have they come out of that? And I said, it is that methodology, whether you talk of Raiffeisen, you talk of Rothschild Pioneers, you talk of these people, and they would say, all right, then, I said, it is a development partnership that I want to offer you. Development partnership has these three obligations on you. Get organized, identify a leader from amongst yourself, generate your own capital through the process of savings, and what is most important, unleash the potential that you have. That is your human resource development.
Okay, we've got a few callers that have come in. 08459 440 445 is the number. What we're talking about necessarily is not charity, because we're talking about an NGO, a Rural Support Programs Network, which, as you've just heard Mr. Khan talk about, is very much about empowering poor people. But I'd like to know from you, what makes you, listening to the BBC Asia Network this afternoon, want to give to charity? And perhaps if you don't, why don't you? Sobia is in Scotland. Hello, Sobia.
Hello, Nihal.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Now, you worked for an NGO in Pakistan, is that right?
Yes, I did. I used to work for an American NGO, so I was there when the flood hit, so I was down in Succor for about 3 weeks at a stretch.
Wow, okay. And what difference do you think the NGO made?
No, it was a huge difference, because obviously, first of all, we distributed NFI kits. They are non-food item kits, because, you know, villages upon villages were just washed away.
Yes.
There was nothing there.
So this is basic survival?
Yeah, basic survival,
right.
And of course water, hygiene, tablets, things like that. And then after that, it was the building of the shelters, so that at least they had something.
Right.
But my basic point, what I wanted to make was that after seeing that, and there were times when we used to come back, and like the gentleman just said, when you go there are like thousands of people who are just standing, and they see you come in a car and they think they're going to give us God knows what. And initially, of course, that's not what happens. We have to go in and do assessments. And there were so many times when colleagues of mine used to just come back to the main city and just sit and cry, because there was nothing initially that we could give them. And it was really, I think, one of the most eye-opening, depressing periods of my work, that you come back and you feel helpless. And I suppose in turn to that, then I used to call back home here in Scotland, and I used to tell Mum and the rest of my family, look, people really need your help. But you know what the sticking point was? People mistrust charities, especially Pakistan's charities and the government funds, so much that people weren't willing to give. So what I saw personally was that a lot of people, even in the country, and Asians, especially British Asians, give a lot. I saw that in the earthquake as well.
Yes.
But this time the giving was of a different nature. They weren't giving to charities, and they weren't giving definitely to the government. What they were doing is they were going through their own channels. So you had people hiring out big vans, hiring out trucks, loading water, loading stuff themselves, going to places and distributing. So then they had the surety that the money that they were giving was actually going to the people who needed it.
That's interesting.
That was one of the fundamental differences between the earthquake and the flood. I commend him that he's been to so many villages, but the obstacles that we faced, a 10-year program, I'm just a little bit apprehensive because there's so many cultural issues. Then you've got feudalism, then you've got the government.
Well, Sophia, just stop you there for a second. I mean, Mr. Khan, these were points I was going to raise as well, is that in many ways, politicians, it suits them to keep poor people poor and ignorant.
Exactly.
Because once they are poor and ignorant, they can control them a lot easier, couldn't they? I mean, the feudal system, as it were, where landowners essentially tell people how to vote and how to think. Now, how easy is it to break that chain? And did you attempt to?
Well, Nihal, there are perceptions and perceptions.
And there are realities.
And there are realities. And the main thing is that you should go to the field. I mean, Sophia had one experience. I mean, there are other experiences also. And she's talking about emergencies. I was talking about development.
Yes.
I mean, the same area she's talking about, for example, 3 years ago, I went to the Chief Minister, Qaim Ali Shah, and I narrated what has been achieved in northern areas of Pakistan and in Andhra Pradesh, where there are 10 million women organized now with 50 million really population. And he said, all right, I'll give you these two districts, Kashmir, Kandkot and Shikarpur. And from the Indian experience, I decided that we would only work with women. In 16 months, almost 200,000 women got organized. And then floods came. Of course, the magnitude of the flood was such that this Sindh Rural Support Organization with which I was associated, I mean, it had to sort of get resources to provide food, to provide non-food utensils and other things to almost 2-3 million people. And in a very short time. We had to, in rehabilitation, there were 43 villages we had to be rehabilitated.
Can you engineer development? And I think this is what Selby is getting at. Can you engineer development in spite of government? Or do you have to have the government on side?
Government are also individuals.
Yes, a human being.
I mean, find one chief minister, he says, yes, of course, I'll do it. I go to others and they are not interested. So it's a question of opportunity. I mean, I went to India and there I found that from Sonia Gandhi to Rahul Gandhi to Chandrababu Naidu to Reddy, everybody said, oh yes, of course, this is what we'll do, and that's how it happened. So,
and did they follow through?
Of course. I mean, that's what I'm saying.
The words became deeds.
Yes. And I mean, in Pakistan,
so don't be so cynical, Sobia.
Unfortunately,
no, I'm not cynical. I'm not cynical, but it's just the apprehension.
Experience.
No, I mean, basically, you see,
so people have this perception to an extent because people have given and they've not seen output. So
yes.
That she's right.
Right, Sobia.
That Sobia is right. I mean, because of course there has been so many malpractices and other things that obviously, when we were being asked, I mean, much of the things which we got when we were asked that which are the best. But for example, I mean, look at our outreach. I mean, we have about 280,000 community organizations with nearly 4.6 million households in Pakistan.
In Pakistan, right. Okay.
Which is almost 30 million people.
Yes.
Now,
how would you say that they have been practically helped, those people in those houses?
I mean, for example, this earthquake, when the earthquake came, these two organizations, the Rural Support Program Network Organization, the National Rural Support Program and the Sarhad Rural Support Program, they almost rehabilitated 122,000 households out of 500,000.
What define rehabilitate? What do you mean by rehabilitate?
Construction of the sort of earthquake-resistant houses, providing them the
infrastructure
relief in the beginning, and then of course training them and all that kind of thing.
Right, and these were NGOs.
But it was not done by. Let me clarify one thing: NGOs can only do up to a certain point, but NGOs like us, I mean, our main focus is on fostering institutions of the people.
Right.
I was telling you about organization. The basic unit is the community organization. Once in a village, when there are maybe 10, 15 community organizations, they form a village organization. And now they've started forming at a union level local support organization. In India, they did the same thing. They started with a self-help group of 15 women, then federated at the village level as a village organization, and now they are at Mandal Samakhya, and then going to the Zilla.
Okay.
So these institutions of the people really, I mean, in our experience in emergencies and floods, they are the ones who really do the maximum work, and they are the ones who are the most transparent and honest. But if you go to individuals or to individual NGOs, then of course you can't be very sure.
Okay, Sabir, thank you very much. Amir, good afternoon, Amir.
Good afternoon.
What would you like to say, sir?
Well, it was interesting to hear large projects, and it's great people are doing all that work. Where I came from was that I saw a flood of emotion and a outpouring of donations, but only to individuals. They were not ready to support organizations, NGOs, or the government funding program. And that was a bit of an eye-opener for me, because I didn't expect that. When the floods came, I was due to go on a family holiday, and 3-4 days before the holiday, I was on a party where they raised some money, and I thought, I'm going there, I should try to raise some money as well. So I sent out a text message to my friend group, and even my electrician said, can you take £20 from me? And this is £20 from my cousin, and there's another one. And out of that text message that I sent, I raised $3,500.
Wow! Wow, that's amazing.
In 2 days, because I was due to fly in 2 days. And people came to my house.
So you took, sorry to interrupt you, Amir, but you took that £3,500 cash to Pakistan with you,
yes,
and then you figured out while you were on the ground how best to spend it.
Right. And then, on the way, when I understood that I've got this money now, I started making contacts with who are the people who are working on the ground, and I found an organization by students. And these are students in high caliber institutions. Some of them were in LUMS, if you have heard of the name, in Lahore. The Lahore University of Management Sciences, one of the top universities there. Some of them were doctors from King Edward, Allama Iqbal. And so they were students of high caliber institutions who...
And you'd never met any of these individuals before?
I had never met them. I just found them on Facebook.
Wow. Okay. So you had no idea how legitimate or not they were?
I had no idea. So I went and met them, and these were boys, really, and girls who were packing their trucks and taking it to the affected areas themselves. So they were not hiring any support. They were just packing things themselves. And I asked them, what do you need? And they said, we need shoes, we need blankets, we need water containers, and that's what we need. So it didn't stop there. I'll tell you, Nawal. It was amazing. So I said, right, I've got £3,000. I'll buy £1,000 of shoes, £1,000 of blankets, and £1,000 worth of water containers. Right. So what happens? I go to a shoe factory, And I said, well, I'm looking for shoes, and why are you looking for them? And I'm doing this. Okay, fine. So this person takes me around, shows me different types of shoes, and says, I think these are best for you. And then he says, right, you need about 100,000. I'll pay you, it's about £1 a shoe. So he says, these are 1,000 pairs for you. And I said, right, so how do I pay you? I says, I don't want any money, take it.
Wow. Okay, so essentially, I mean, just to cut a long story short, it's direct action, effectively direct action.
That they saw that somebody is actually doing it themselves, and they just gave the money to me. So that 3,000 that I raised, in effect, became 5,000 by the end. So people just the blanket.
I mean, sorry to interrupt you again, my friend, but essentially, what you're encouraging at British Asians to do is, if you see this issue, you can very easily, very directly deal with it yourself.
Oh, yes.
Okay, Amir, we're going to have to leave it there, but thank you very much indeed for that. Suk in Dartford, good afternoon.
Hi, Nihal.
How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm fine, and I've just come back from India.
Right.
And you do see loads of poverty there.
Yes.
And I just feel as though the people that live there, they seem to turn and die. That's how I felt. And when you see them, I was spending so much money, and then I felt guilty for spending so much money when people out there don't have as much as yourself.
Were you ever told, Suk, don't give money to these people, they're gangs, they're not real, you know, the kids are not real, they're you know, they're in a gang, yada yada yada. Were you ever told any of that?
Yeah, he was like, if you give it to one, you're going to get another 20 coming up to your car, you know, just get in the car, shut the door and go. And, you know, you just think, well, no, I think I can do a lot more than that. You know, we do raise loads of money here in England. We always do charity events, raise money for charity. Never seem to do it to send it to India, because I always feel as though the money's not going to get to the people that need it the most. So that's the one thing in the back of my mind that worries me.
Well, Suk, sorry to interrupt you, Suk, because I just want to bring Mr. Khan in at this point. This is such a big problem. I mean, you're talking about in India alone, estimates 700 million people living on $2 or less a day in India. The poverty problem, I mean, Suk, where were you when you saw all these beggars? Were you in the Punjab? Were you in Bombay?
Yeah, I was in the Punjab.
Right, in the Punjab, seeing this kind of poverty. I mean, 250,000 people, this is a drop in the ocean, isn't it? I mean, obviously I understand it, you've got to start somewhere. How many people do you think these programs have brought out of poverty in the last 10 years?
Well, in 1995, when UN asked me to initiate the South Asia Poverty Alleviation Program, and one of the countries was India, and I know that the file went right up to Mr. Narasimha Rao, the Prime Minister, that should a Pakistani be let loose in the rural areas. And he said, why not? Because he's coming with a UN hat. And let him start from my district, Kurnool. So I was sent to Kurnool. And as the lady was saying, I mean, I was really shocked. Women earning 5 rupees a day, weeding the fields of the zamindars.
Back-breaking work.
Yes. But those same principles which I mentioned to you in the beginning, the principles of development, once they got organized, once they started generating their own capital through savings, once they improved and unleashed the potential they have. I was there, listen to me now, I was there, I mean, within these 12 years and now they're almost 15 years, 10 million such women have come out of poverty. They are now accessing credit from commercial banks, and of course the government has been very sort of generous in that it reimburses. This is why there was this big MFI crisis there. It reimburses the interest to the bank if it is paid on time. And those very women which were earning 5 rupees, when I go to their houses now, they have all facilities that I can imagine of. And they can even access 100,000, 200,000 rupees through these organizations from the... So, as you said, there are almost 450 to 500 million people in India.
Yes.
And I'm talking about 50 million. But now
10%.
Sonia Gandhi had come up with a program called National Rural Livelihood Mission.